Good evening from College Station, Texas. This is Dr. Peter Tarlow, and normally I'm with my colleague and friend, uh, Thomas or Juergen Steinmetz, depending upon how you know him, who broadcasts from Hawaii. Thomas is in Wisconsin this evening, and it was impossible for us to do our normal dialogue together. So instead, we're going to do two monologues. I'm going to do a monologue, and he's going to do a monologue. And then hopefully together, we will be able to meld the two monologues into an interesting program. This is especially important because he will be traveling until the end of the week. And next week, I will be in Costa Rica and in Bogota, Colombia, at the Latin American Tourism Security Conference. And so we won't really, for about 2 weeks, have time to try to create a formal connection. Instead, we're going to try to create this sense of what might call bi-monologues or duo monologues, and hopefully they'll come together in a good sense. There's lots going on in the world of tourism, as many of you know. Certainly, if you're looking from the perspective of the United States, we're having all sorts of interesting crises. The border is in a worse situation than ever. We see crime in American major cities that is literally out of control. What happened yesterday, that would be on the 4th of October in Philadelphia, was truly a tragedy, with people doing donut cartwheels around police cars and dancing on them, with absolutely no consequences for what was taking place. We're seeing other crises, and those of us who go to supermarkets know that the prices are continuously going up every time we walk in. And that's going to, all of these things are affecting tourism tremendously. And so today, one of the things we're seeing is that problems with airports overcharging, airlines being charged incredible amounts of landing fees. And of course, this is eventually going to be passed on to the consumer as very expensive situations. So we might say that this is really a period of crises. And I recently wrote an article talking about crisis management in the tourism industry. I thought I might talk a little bit about that today, and some of the issues that we need to be prepared for. We have both natural crises and we have man-made crises. The situation at the US-Mexican border, or people throughout Latin America right now, are suffering from a human-made crisis. On the other hand, we see problems with hurricanes and earthquakes and droughts and other types of weather crises, which traditionally were called acts of God. Now they're often called natural calamities. So what are some of the things that we can do to try to deal with those natural calamities? One of the first things is important is, if you're in the world of tourism, have a plan ready before the event takes place. In other words, once a crisis has hit, it's probably too late to start doing plans. Sit down, create something that shows that you have thought the process through and you have an idea of what you would do, no matter what the black swan event might be. A black swan, for those who do not know what it means an event that happens very rarely, but when it does happen, it's a really big issue. Try to think through, tourism is a business. So try to think through your tourism recovery plan. How will you market in order to help your local businesses get back on their feet? And how will you market in order to get your tourism industry back on its feet? And that means that you're going to have to take the time to plan again prior to the event. When you have the time to think about it, the time to develop ideas, you can always change a plan, but you cannot develop a plan from nothing. So therefore, have the plans ready and then modify them if, God forbid, the crisis takes place. Try to create as many good working relationships between private businesses and government entities. Often they see the world in very different ways. If you can bring people together before a crisis, then they're going to have the ability to talk to each other, know each other on a first name basis, and understand they're not on opposite teams, they're really on the same team. Don't forget that, unfortunately, disasters are an opportunity for crime, and crime is a cancer that destroys, gnaws at the heart of tourism. So therefore, make sure that your police department, your fire department, your health department, your first responders, ambulances, hospitals are all interconnected, and understanding that during a crisis, especially a natural crisis, yes, you may be dealing with a flood or an earthquake, but there'll be looting. There'll be somebody trying to take advantage of the situation. And therefore, you're going to have a way of developing both sides of that coin at the same time. And third side, reporters on the media are going to be spreading negative news. And how are you going to deal with those problems when they take place? Therefore, it is essential that you have good relations with the media, that they understand what your issues are. And all too often, I think journalists are so interested in the headline that they forget the negative consequences of what they've caused. And they're interested in eyeballs on their television screen or eyeballs on their newspaper. They're not interested in the damage that they do to real people. So the better you're able to speak with journalists, be they in any form of media, you're able to help them understand there are consequences to what they do, and that if you destroy the tourism industry, in the end, you won't have a media. Some of this information is going to be classified. And so it's really important that you develop protocols. Who will have access to what information? And the media is going to be asking, the media will be asking for a tremendous amount of information. What do you give and what don't you give? Now, of course, we live in the world of COVID and of pandemics. And so it's really important that local tourism industries consistently work with public health officials. That means everything from being on a plane to knowing when a plane ought not to take off, to making sure that hotels are not using COVID as a way to save money on housekeeping, but rather that they are using good COVID policies to keep people safe and yet at the same time provide good service. If service dies because people are trying to take advantage of COVID, in the end, tourism will also die. And we don't want tourism to be a victim of COVID. Have some sort of multi-jurisdictional plan. Most communities are part of larger communities, and therefore you have to think through locally and regionally at the same time, and that's really important. Begin your tourism program for recovery actually before the crisis takes place. In other words, not only should you have plans for dealing with the crisis, you should also assume the crisis, at least on paper, and then begin to think through how will that tourism recovery program be implemented, and will it actually work? And of course, you have a tourism recovery program for every possible form of crisis about which you can think. Now, that's a lot of information. We have lots of stuff that's going on, but one of the important things to do is assess what you have. Know what your strengths and your weaknesses are. Know how you can cooperate with your friends, and who might be opposing you or who might create problems. And if we can create those types of situations, then I think we will be better prepared for crises, be it on a personal level, on a community level, a regional level, be it something that is a result of a natural phenomena or something that politicians have created. So I'm going to, at this point, sign off. My colleague, Thomas Steinmetz, will be interacting with you. One of the things I neglected to say, and I'm going to end because this is a transition with the weather, is that we always chat a little bit about the weather. The weather today in Texas has been absolutely beautiful. Lots of sunshine, temperatures in the 80s, and blue skies. So hopefully those blue skies are symbolic for all of you, that it'll be clear sailing and you won't have to face a crisis. Thank you for listening. Good night. And I hope this was a valuable commentary that will will then be added to by my colleague, Juergen Steinmetz. Good evening.
Thank you, Peter. And my name is Juergen Steinmetz, joining you from eTurbo News in Honolulu. And Peter, as he said, he's now in Costa Rica, and I got back from a cross-country trip. And I attended the Society of Travel Writers Conference in Milwaukee, what was very interesting. And I had a chance to speak at the event, and then took a train, a cross-country train on Amtrak all the way from Milwaukee to Portland, Oregon. It was a 2-day ride. I treated myself to a what they call bedroom, and it was quite comfortable. The bathroom a little bit too small for my size, but I managed for 2 days, and saw a lot, driving through the countryside along the close to the Canadian border, all the way to the West Coast and down to Portland, Oregon, where I spent 2 days. I have to say, having been on trains in Europe and other parts of the world, we do need to get trains improved. Even though it was a fantastic experience to see the countryside, the trains are from the 70s and 60s. They're old. Windows, even in the panorama room, it was very hard to look outside because they're just so filthy and dirty. And so that was a little bit of a downer, but the atmosphere was wonderful. There are some nice people on board of this train. It wasn't too crowded. The food was decent, nothing special, but I had a good time. And now I'm back in Honolulu after 2 days in Portland, Oregon. What a different city. I've never been to Portland before and made it back. One experience I wanted to lay out a little bit, we also did an article on this, was something what kind of shocked me. I flew to Milwaukee on United Airlines through Chicago. And when you get to Chicago, you change to a small commuter airline. It's only like 100 miles to go from Chicago to Milwaukee. So you really don't need to fly. You can take a bus or a train also. But I flew since I connected. And before we boarded this flight, United Airlines made an announcement that it could get a little bit warm on board the next commuter flight, but it's only a short flight because they had a problem with the air conditioned cooling system. So I thought to myself, yes, it's only 30 minutes in the air, so I'm sure it'll be okay. But what I didn't know, and what no one knew, that the entire ventilation system was broken. So there was no ventilation, and United Airlines apparently was well aware of it. And so we took off. Not only was the plane uncomfortable, warm and hot, what was expected after the announcement, but there was no airflow. And it was a 60-seat commuter plane, sold out. There was not one empty seat. People were coughing in the back row, and it was scary, I have to say. In times of Corona, I cannot for the world of it understand how an airline with the reputation of United, and I'm a 3 million mile flyer with United, so obviously I like the airline, could allow for this plane to depart. Now, I did a little bit of research on board. I was able to talk to the only flight attendant on board, and she was very nice and said she wouldn't go on another flight like this. This was her third flight. I don't know where when this problem came up on the first flight, they landed and decided to go on to Chicago because United Airlines main hub is Chicago and all the maintenance was there, only to find out, since this is officially Air Milwaukee, a commuter airline, the maintenance for Air Milwaukee wasn't in Chicago, but in Milwaukee. And so United decided to operate this flight again, or Air, maybe to be fair, Air Milwaukee decided to get this plane home. And we took off in a plane with absolutely no airflow in midst of a pandemic. And when we landed in Milwaukee, it wasn't just me. There was another passenger who said he was a former commercial pilot. And he asked the captain, and I asked the captain, if this was really safe to operate this flight. And I mean, I couldn't believe his response. He said, no, it wasn't. And we should have not operated it. But it was above his pay grade where this decision was made. The other gentleman who was with me then said that he, as a pilot, would have had the last call on this. And the pilot we had didn't say very much about it, and we walked away. But it's now a week almost since this happened. I'm fully vaccinated, but I know other passengers were not fully vaccinated, and we would never know if anyone would have gotten corona on this plane. So I called to United. First, I talked to the 1K desk, what is a very good thing, because whenever you have a complaint or something you wanted to discuss with United, you can call the 1K service desk, and they're very nice and trained people who usually do their absolute best to respond. Now, also this response was different. They said they don't know anything about the problem. There wasn't anything logged, and they would get back to me. No one got back to me, but all of a sudden I see 5,000 miles credited to my United account. And believe me, it wasn't about getting 5,000 extra miles. It was a concern about safety and security and not catching this coronavirus. So I called the 1K desk back, and I also reached out at that time to media relations because I thought it's a good story, and we published this story. Media relations only got back to us one time saying there was no incident report on this plane, so therefore they wanted to verify if this was really the right flight number, and I did. And finally, I did get a response from Air Wisconsin. I got this response maybe because I reached out to United, or maybe I talked to Chris, I don't know his last name, who said he was the VP of Safety and Security for Air Milwaukee. He acknowledged there was a problem. He said he agreed with me this flight probably should have not taken off, and he would investigate this. And I asked him if there is a log of people who were on this flight, so in case there is a corona outbreak, that United would know who to talk to. So he said he would get back to me on this question, never did. But we did get a response from Air Wisconsin Public Relations. This response was an email. It wasn't signed by any person. There was not even a sender on it. But obviously it came from Air Wisconsin, from one of their email addresses, and said that the flight was completely safe to operate under FAA guidelines. So whatever that means, let's hope the best is coming out of it, or nothing is coming out of it. But as you can see, there is a lot of uncertainty. And for someone like me living in Hawaii, where it has been quite sheltered and secured and kind of isolated, even now, flying to an area like Milwaukee where everything is open, you hardly see anyone with a mask, and the hotels were full. The convention center had several events going on. It is quite a game changer. But this United flight really made me think twice about how serious the airlines are really taking the situation, or maybe the situation is no longer that serious. That could be another discussion. However, I'm back in Honolulu. Everything is fine here. It was a nice sunny day today, and we'll be busy with new stories and new outreach this week. So please stay tuned, and you can listen to our news channel 24/7. And if you ever wanted to go to archive, simply go to our youtube.com/travel news group, or simply youtube.com/eturbonews. Thank you very much, and we talk to you later. Aloha and good night. Bye-bye.